The White Shadow. The Fire and the SA. The cargo ship burned for 3 days off the coast of Morocco. From a distance, it looked like a dying star sinking into the horizon, its flames too bright, too alive to be real. On board, among the smoke and chemical stench, a man in a white linen shirt staggered through the narrow steel corridors. His name was Gabriel Vega, but the world would one day know him by another name. The White Shadow. He coughed blood into his sleeve, his lungs raw from smoke, and forced open the cabin door. Inside, stacks of black cases, metallic, unmarked, sealed with wax. He kicked one open. Inside lay photographs, faces of people he once trusted, now burned or crossed out. He stared at the faces until the flames reached the walls, then tossed the photographs into the fire. When the ship finally sank beneath him, Gabriel didn't scream. He let the ocean take him, cold, violent, honest. That night, the world recorded a nameless tragedy at sea. But Gabriel Vega didn't die. He disappeared. And in the silence that followed, the world began whispering his new name. Chapter 1, The Ghost of Madrid. Madrid. 2003. Rain turned the streets into rivers of light, gold and crimson reflections sliding across cobblestones. A café on Calle de Segovia glowed warm against the storm. Inside, men in suits drank espresso and argued about football. At the corner table, a man in a white suit stirred his coffee and said nothing. He looked 40, maybe younger, though his eyes were older than any calendar. His hair was dark, his skin lightly tanned, his hands steady, too steady. On the table beside him sat a leather folder, a single sheet of paper inside. The waiter approached nervously. "Another espresso, señor." Gabriel nodded without looking up. His Spanish carried traces of something foreign, Portuguese, perhaps, or Andalusian coastal. His movements were efficient, almost military. When the waiter left, Gabriel opened the folder. Inside was a photograph, a man in a gray suit, laughing beside a swimming pool. Beneath it, a name written in ink, Rafael Vega. His brother. Dead 3 years. The official report said, killed in a warehouse explosion near Tangier. But Gabriel had read between the lines, he had served too long in the Foreign Legion not to recognize a cover-up. The explosion had been no accident, it was a cleanup. His brother had worked as a customs agent, stumbled onto something that shouldn't have existed, an unregistered shipping lane used by European intelligence and organized crime alike. When Rafael tried to expose it, someone made sure he vanished. For 3 years, Gabriel had hunted ghosts, men who didn't exist, files that deleted themselves, companies that vanished overnight. Then, one night in Panama, he found what he was looking for. A name whispered by mercenaries, port officials, and smugglers alike. The Cortez Syndicate. And now, he had their route. He reached into his coat and pulled out a phone no one could trace. One number saved. He pressed call. A woman answered in Spanish, calm and sharp. "You're late." "I'm not late," Gabriel said. "I was watching the rain." "You always watch the rain," she replied. "Is it still falling?" "It never stops." Silence, then, "The meeting is ready. Shinjuku, 2 days. You'll meet Kenta. Don't bring a gun." Gabriel smiled faintly. "You know I will." The call ended. He looked back out at the storm. Somewhere in the reflection, his face seemed to blur, half man, half shadow. He left Madrid that night with nothing but a passport, a photograph, and a hunger that felt older than his bones. On the flight to Tokyo, he didn't sleep. He read the file instead, each page printed on special fiber paper, marked with coordinates and encrypted names. The Cortez Syndicate ran routes through Japan, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, protected by governments that pretended not to see. He remembered Rafael's voice from years ago, at their father's vineyard in Seville. "The world isn't divided by good men and bad men, Gabby. It's divided by those who write the laws and those who transport what the laws forbid. Gabriel had laughed then. He didn't laugh now. As dawn broke over the Pacific, the light hit his reflection in the airplane window. For a moment, he didn't recognize the man staring back. Maybe that was the beginning, the moment Gabriel Vega died, and the white shadow was born. Chapter 2, The Architect of Fear. Tokyo smelled of rain and iron. From the window of his 26th-floor hotel room, Gabriel Vega watched the city pulse beneath him, lanes of headlights moving like veins of light through the midnight haze. He had been here before, once as a soldier, later as a courier for men whose names were never written down. But this time he came as something else, a man with purpose and no country left to betray. On the low table sat a single object, a shogi piece carved from ivory, the kanji for king burned into its face. It had been waiting for him when he checked in. No message, no sender. Only the mark of whoever wanted to meet. At 9 sharp, his phone vibrated twice. A location appeared. Bar 53, Shinjuku. Basement. Ask for Kenta. Bar 53 was hidden beneath an aging pachinko hall whose neon sign flickered between blue and blood red. Inside, smoke and jazz curled together in the air. A dozen men sat drinking silently, their tattoos just visible beneath rolled-up sleeves. A small, sharp-featured man approached. "You are Vega. Gabriel will do." The man nodded once. "Kenta." They sat in the back booth. 2 glasses appeared, the whiskey burned like truth. Kenta studied him openly. "You were military." "Once," Gabriel said. "A long time ago." "Good. Soldiers understand rules. I stopped following orders the day my brother was murdered." Kenta tilted his head. "And now?" "Now I write the orders." For a moment neither spoke. Then Kenta slid a data chip across the table. "Routes," he said. "Ships, manifests, customs codes. The Cortez Syndicate buys protection from everyone, police, ministers, even my former employers. You want revenge? You'll need men, ships, and someone to wash the blood from the numbers." "And you?" Gabriel asked. Kenta smiled thinly. "I want a kingdom that does not collapse when one man dies." They drove to the port of Yokohama, rain whispering against the windshield. Containers rose like silent tombs in the fog. Kenta led him into a warehouse where 6 men waited, tattoos winding over their arms like living ink. One of them spat on the ground. "So this is the gaijin who thinks he can replace Cortez?" Gabriel said nothing. He walked to a stack of crates and tore one open with a crowbar. Inside were sealed plastic bricks of heroin. He picked one up, weighed it in his hand, then tossed it back. "You pay double for security," he said calmly, "and still half your shipments vanish before Hong Kong. You think Cortez is protecting you, but he's the one stealing from you." The men murmured. Kenta raised an eyebrow. "Proof." Gabriel pulled a small drive from his pocket and inserted it into a terminal. The screen filled with shipping data, red lines connecting ports across Asia. He pointed to a single blinking route. "This container, registered to your company, was intercepted 2 days ago. The insurance money went to a shell firm owned by Cortez's cousin. You're all funding your own robbery." The room went silent. Then one of the men laughed, a short, nervous bark. "What do you want, Vega?" Gabriel looked at them one by one. "I want what's already mine. The routes. The ports. The silence. Work for me, and I'll make sure Cortez never steals from you again. And if we refuse? Then you'll explain to Cortez why your men were meeting with me tonight." It was not a threat shouted but a truth whispered. And in the criminal world, whispers traveled faster than bullets. By dawn, Gabriel had half of Tokyo's port under his influence. He did not buy loyalty, he engineered it. Every man who joined owed him protection, and every rival who hesitated found their accounts emptied or their ships impounded by anonymous bureaucrats who owed Vega quiet favors. He never used violence unless necessary. When he did, it was surgical, a warehouse fire here, a car accident there. Nothing random. Nothing emotional. In 3 months, Cortez shipments started disappearing. By the 4th month, ports from Osaka to Busan were whispering a new name, El Blanco, the man in the white suit who could move anything anywhere without leaving a trace. Gabriel studied the maps in his rented office, the city's hum vibrating through the glass. The routes formed patterns, arteries feeding a living body. He realized he was not simply running contraband. He was constructing a system. Kenta entered quietly. The Cortez men are nervous. They want a meeting. Gabriel didn't look up. They'll come when they're afraid enough. And if they strike first, then we make an example. He turned to face the window, Tokyo blazing below like circuitry. Fear, Gabriel said softly, is the cleanest currency. It buys obedience faster than money. Kenta frowned. You speak like a man building an empire. Gabriel's reflection in the glass looked back at him, a faint, pale ghost in a storm of lights. No, he said. I'm building something that doesn't die. Outside, the rain began again, soft as breath. Somewhere in the maze of the city, a ship changed course under orders no one could trace, carrying a new emblem on its manifest. A single white king painted on the crate. Chapter 3, The Mirror Deal. The night smelled of salt and gasoline. Gabriel stood on the rooftop of a warehouse near Tokyo Bay, coat whipping in the wind. Below, cranes moved containers in and out of cargo ships like giant mechanical insects. From here, the city looked almost clean, its corruption buried under miles of lights. Kenta lit a cigarette beside him. They agreed to meet, he said. Gabriel didn't turn. Where? Panama City. Cortez himself. He wants to talk about peace. Gabriel smiled faintly. Peace is expensive. Kenta exhaled smoke. He says he's willing to pay. Then he doesn't understand what he's buying. Gabriel's plane touched down in Panama at midnight. The air was heavy with heat, the kind that clings to the skin and doesn't let go. A black SUV waited near the runway. 2 men in linen suits stood by the door, both armed, both pretending not to be. The driver looked back. Senor Cortez is expecting you at sunrise. Gabriel nodded. Drive. The car wound through the old district, past decaying Spanish colonial walls and graffiti that glowed under street lamps. He saw children playing football barefoot, soldiers smoking in alleys, the city breathing through its scars. He recognized the rhythm, it was the same beat every empire played before it fell. At dawn, they arrived at the Mirador, a glass tower overlooking the Pacific. Gabriel walked through the lobby, his white suit drawing glances from guards and secretaries alike. He didn't need to show weapons, his calm was weapon enough. The elevator doors opened to the top floor. Rafael Cortez was waiting. Cortez was built like a banker, not a killer, gray hair, tailored suit, manicured hands. But his eyes betrayed him. Cold. Sharp. Like a man who'd ordered more deaths than he could count. Senor Vega, Cortez said, rising from behind his desk. Or should I say, El Blanco? Gabriel's expression didn't change. Names are like currencies. They lose value when spoken too often. Cortez chuckled. And yet yours is becoming quite expensive. They sat. Between them, the glass windows framed the ocean like a mirror. 2 predators reflected in the same light. I know why you're here, Cortez said. You want revenge for your brother. Gabriel leaned forward slightly. I want an end to the rot that killed him. That rot built everything you now control. I'm not interested in your philosophy. You used my brother to clean your routes. When he found out what you were doing, you burned him alive. Cortez smiled thinly. I didn't light the fire myself. That's your defense? It's the truth. I ordered it, yes. But you should thank me. That day made you what you are. For a long moment, only the hum of the air conditioner filled the room. Gabriel stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the city waking below. You wanted to meet for peace. I came to offer something better. Cortez raised an eyebrow. And what's that? A mirror, Gabriel said softly. I will give you a reflection of your empire, routes, ships, accounts. But they will all belong to me. You can keep your face, your name, your illusion of control. I'll take everything else. Cortez laughed, but there was a tremor in it. You're insane. No, Gabriel said, turning. I'm patient. 2 days later, they met again. This time, no suits, no guards, just a table between them in a private warehouse outside the city. On it lay a single hard drive. Gabriel tapped it once. Every encrypted manifest you've hidden for 10 years. Every route, every offshore account. I've copied them all. Cortez frowned. Impossible. Ask your accountant in Macau. The files he tried to access this morning no longer exist. I erased the copies, left only mine. How? I had help. Kenta. And a woman named Rin Sato. You might remember her. You used to pay her to clean your crypto channels. Cortez's jaw tightened. She's dead. Gabriel's smile was cold. No one really dies in this business. They just change servers. He slid a second drive across the table. This is my offer. 50% of your routes. You run them under my control. You keep your money. I keep your silence. Or what? Gabriel met his gaze. Or the world learns who you really work for. The ministers. The generals. The banks that launder your wars. For the first time, Rafael Cortez looked uncertain. He poured himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly. You think you can threaten me, Vega? No, Gabriel said quietly. I already did. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the exit. Cortez's men moved to stop him, but Cortez lifted a hand. Let him go. As Gabriel disappeared into the light outside, Cortez stared at the drive on the table, realization creeping over him. The mirror deal wasn't a negotiation. It was an obituary. That night, fires erupted in Panama's financial district, servers, records, ledgers going up in flames. Cortez's empire began to collapse piece by piece, as if someone had memorized its anatomy and cut out the vital organs first. From Tokyo, Gabriel watched the chaos unfold on the news. Kenta stood behind him, expression unreadable. It worked, Kenta said. It was never about working, Gabriel replied. It was about sending a message. To whom? To everyone who thinks they can live forever. He turned off the TV. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain against the glass. Fear, Gabriel murmured, almost to himself, isn't control. It's only the beginning of obedience. The real power comes when people start fearing themselves. He looked down at the city map spread across his desk, lines and circles drawn like a spider's web. Cortez's routes were his now. But for Gabriel Vega, the revenge that once drove him was already hollow. The shadow he built was growing faster than he could contain. And somewhere deep inside him, a voice whispered the truth he refused to hear. He wasn't avenging his brother anymore. He was replacing him. Chapter 4, The Woman Who Watched the World Burn. Madrid, 2015. Madrid was drowning in rain. The sky had been gray for days, the city shimmering under streetlights that turned puddles into mirrors. In a small apartment above a printing shop, Isabella Cruz sat surrounded by half-drunk coffee cups and glowing monitors. Her hair was tied in a loose knot, her eyes red from lack of sleep, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. She'd been tracing shipping records for 30 hours straight. The files were encrypted, disguised as agricultural exports, but Isabella knew the codes. Every crate, every ship name, every number spoke to her in patterns. She had seen them before, once in the official report about the explosion that killed her father 15 years ago. The government called it an accident. Isabella had never believed them. Now, the same signature had surfaced again, halfway across the world. S. Vega Trading. She zoomed in on the name, her pulse quickening. The company didn't exist, yet its routes were everywhere: Hong Kong, Lisbon, Cartagena, Yokohama. Every record ended with a single symbol printed beside it, a white chess king. She whispered the name under her breath. Gabriel Vega. Outside, thunder rolled over the rooftops. She had heard of Vega before, but only as a ghost story told by smugglers and bankers. A man who built invisible empires, who ran ships that never docked on paper. No one had ever seen his face, only the results of his work: companies erased overnight, governments destabilized, cartels turned against each other. She thought he was a myth. Now, the myth was talking to her. 2 weeks later, the first message came. No sender, no subject line, just one line of text. If you want the truth, stop looking at the crimes. Look at the routes. Attached was an image of the Panama Canal, red lines crisscrossing over the water until they formed a crown. She printed it out, pinned it to her board, and wrote beneath it in black ink, "The White Shadow." Isabella wasn't sure if it was a warning or an invitation. She began following the trails the way her father once taught her to read tides. Every line led to another country, another shell company, another whisper of a man who owned everything but appeared nowhere. Her first stop was Tangier, the port where her father had died. She spoke to the old customs officers who still remembered the explosion. They told her a name she'd never heard before: Rafael Cortez. A syndicate leader. A man who once owned the western routes, until someone took them from him. Who took them? She asked. The old officer hesitated. A man in white. They called him El Blanco. By the time she reached Panama, the city was already on fire, banks burning, accounts frozen, names being erased in real time. She watched the chaos unfold from a cafe near the harbor. She didn't know it yet, but the destruction she was witnessing was Gabriel Vega's doing. The mirror deal had just ended. Cortez was finished. She ordered another coffee, pretending not to notice the two men watching her from a nearby table. They were professionals, clean clothes, no expression, no wasted movements. When she looked back, they were gone. That night, her hotel room door was unlocked. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. Except one thing: on the desk lay a white chess piece. The king. She touched it, half expecting it to vanish. A card sat beneath it, plain white, with one word written in careful black ink. Tokyo. 3 days later, she landed there. The city's pulse was electric, alive with rain and neon. She spent hours walking the streets, looking for patterns: ports, bars, offices that matched the records she had memorized. She found one name repeating: Kenta. A fixer, a broker of information. The kind of man who survived by knowing everyone else's secrets. She found him in a smoke-filled bar in Shinjuku. His hair was slicked back, his face marked with the faint scars of a man who'd seen too many deals go wrong. "You're not police," he said, watching her. "No." "Then what are you?" "Someone who wants to understand Vega." He laughed softly. "No one understands him. They obey, they fear, they disappear. That's the order of things." "Then why are you still here?" "Because I'm useful." She leaned forward. "Tell me what he wants." Kenta's smile faded. "He doesn't want anything. That's what makes him dangerous. He's not driven by money or power. He builds systems. Once they're perfect, he burns them down. When she left the bar, the rain had started again. She walked through Shibuya Crossing, lost among hundreds of strangers. And then, she saw him. A man in a white suit, hands in his pockets, standing perfectly still while the crowd flowed around him. He wasn't looking at the lights or the buildings. He was looking directly at her. Their eyes met. He smiled. Not the smile of recognition. The smile of inevitability. She blinked, and he was gone. Back in her hotel room, she found another envelope waiting on the bed. No handwriting this time, just a silver USB drive inside. She plugged it into her laptop, and a single video opened. It was footage from a security camera, her father's port, the night of the explosion. She watched him walking along the dock, clipboard in hand. Then, another figure appeared beside him, a tall man in white, face obscured by rain. They spoke briefly. Her father pointed toward a container. The man nodded once, then walked away. Moments later, the dock erupted in flame. Isabella froze. She replayed the clip again and again, her breath coming in shallow bursts. The date stamp confirmed what she didn't want to believe. The man who had spoken to her father moments before his death was the same man she'd just seen in Tokyo. Gabriel Vega. The myth had become real. And he wanted her to find him. She sat back, trembling, as the final frame of the video flickered. The image glitched, distorting into static before words appeared across the screen. Truth is only dangerous when someone survives to tell it. The video ended. Outside, thunder echoed across the city again. Isabella closed her laptop and stared out the window at the rain-soaked streets below, knowing she had crossed a line she could never step back from. Somewhere in the maze of Tokyo, the man in white was waiting. And she didn't know whether she was hunting him. Or being led exactly where he wanted her to go. Chapter 5: The Man in White. Tokyo never truly slept, it just dimmed for a few hours and hummed quieter. By the time Isabella Cruz left her hotel, the streets were glistening from the night's rain. Steam rose from the manholes, the city breathing like a living thing. She walked with her head down, a trench coat wrapped tight, her nerves steady only because she forced them to be. She had done her research. She had prepared. But she had no plan for what came after she found him. At the far end of the street, a small noodle shop flickered with dull yellow light. The sign read Kizuna. It wasn't on any map. It didn't exist in any directory. But the USB drive had led her here, coordinates buried in the metadata, hidden beneath the last line of code. She pushed open the door. The place was empty except for a young woman behind the counter, silent, eyes fixed on a chessboard laid out beside a bowl of soup. Isabella hesitated. "I'm looking for someone." The woman didn't look up. "You already found him." From the back of the shop, Gabriel Vega stepped into view. The same white suit. The same calm. The same eyes she'd seen in the video beside her father. "Sit," he said simply. She sat. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The rain tapping against the window was the only sound between them. He poured sake into 2 cups, pushed one toward her. "You've been very busy, Miss Cruz." "You left breadcrumbs," she replied, her voice low. "I followed them." He smiled faintly. "Good. I like people who listen." "You killed my father." "No," he said. "I gave him a choice. He chose wrong." Her hand tightened around the cup. "You're saying he deserved it?" "I'm saying he saw what others refused to see. And that frightened people who pay for silence." "Who are you?" she whispered. "A criminal? A revolutionary?" Gabriel leaned forward, the light catching the edge of his face. "A builder," he said. "I build what governments destroy. I build order from chaos." And I destroy it when it becomes corrupt. Like Cortez? He nodded once. Cortez thought he was immortal. So I reminded him how quickly men disappear. She studied him carefully. His words were deliberate, his tone measured, his confidence absolute, but there was something underneath, something fractured. You think you're different, she said. But you're just another man rewriting morality to justify murder. He didn't flinch. If I told you your father's death wasn't random, would you still believe that? Her heart pounded. What do you mean? He was investigating a shipment that never existed. It wasn't drugs or weapons, it was data. Encrypted systems designed to manipulate global trade routes. The same system you stumbled into. He found it. He was offered a chance to walk away. He refused. She swallowed hard. And you? What were you doing there? Protecting the project from people who wanted to weaponize it. Who? She demanded. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said quietly, the same people who sent you that first email. The words hit her like ice. She remembered the message. If you want the truth, stop looking at the crimes. Look at the routes. She had assumed it came from an ally. Now, she wasn't sure. You think they used me? I don't think, Gabriel said. I know. She stood up, anger rising. You expect me to believe that the man who destroys cities is somehow the victim? He didn't move. I expect you to believe your own eyes. You've seen the records. Every empire I burn is rebuilt cleaner. Every man I erase was a parasite. And when they run out, she asked. When there are no parasites left to kill? He smiled. Then I disappear. She turned to leave. His voice stopped her at the door. They're watching you, Isabella. Not because you found me, but because you're the only one who can expose them. She froze. Expose who? He nodded toward her phone. Call your editor. Ask if he's still alive. Her breath caught. She pulled the phone from her pocket. No signal. She tried again. Nothing. The line was dead. Outside, sirens wailed, far away, but coming closer. What did you do? She whispered. Nothing, Gabriel said softly. But they did. They needed you to find me so they could find this place. She looked at him in disbelief. You used me. No, he said calmly, pulling a small flash drive from his pocket. I'm giving you what you came for. He tossed it to her. That's the full record, shipments, accounts, politicians, banks. The real architects of everything your father tried to stop. You expose it, and the world changes. You hide it, and they win. And you? She asked. What happens to you? He shrugged. I was never meant to survive this long. The sirens were closer now, echoing through the alleys. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Go, he said. Through the back door. There's a car waiting. Don't stop. What about you? He smiled faintly. I'll keep them busy. Before she could answer, the front windows shattered. Flashbangs erupted in white light. Armed men poured through the doorway, black uniforms, visors, unmarked weapons. Gabriel moved fast, flipping the table, pulling Isabella down behind it. The air filled with smoke and splinters. Run, he shouted. She hesitated only a second before bolting for the back door, clutching the flash drive. As she stumbled into the rain-soaked alley, she looked back once, and saw him standing in the smoke, unarmed, facing the soldiers. Calm. Defiant. Like a man who had already accepted his place in history. The car door opened. A voice from inside called, "Get in." She slid into the seat. The driver floored it. Through the mirror, she saw the noodle shop erupt into flames. Then nothing but the city disappearing behind them. For the first time, Isabella realized she no longer knew who the enemy was. The story she thought she was writing had changed. And Gabriel Vega, whatever he truly was, had just made her the most dangerous witness in the world. As the car sped through the Tokyo night, she looked at the flash drive in her hand. It was small. Ordinary. But inside it, the truth waited, alive, burning, waiting to consume whoever opened it. Somewhere behind her, the fire kept spreading. And in the reflection of the window, for just a moment, she thought she saw him again, white suit, steady eyes, watching her from the dark. Then he was gone. But the shadow he'd left behind was only beginning to grow. Chapter 6: The Data of Ghosts. The rain had stopped by morning, but Tokyo still glistened like it had been carved from glass. Isabella Cruz sat in the back seat of the car Gabriel Vega had arranged for her, staring out the window as the city blurred by. She hadn't slept. Her hands trembled around the flash drive, the only thing she had left to prove that everything, her father's death, Cortez's collapse, Gabriel himself, was real. The driver didn't speak. He stopped outside a small apartment building in Aoyama, bowed once, and drove off. Isabella climbed the narrow stairs to a third-floor room that smelled faintly of cedar and old tea. There was a single desk, a flickering lamp, and a laptop waiting for her. She sat down slowly, as if afraid the moment might break. The flash drive slid in with a soft click. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen turned black and a line of text appeared. "Welcome to the archive." Isabella hesitated, then pressed enter. The screen exploded into data, spreadsheets, encrypted messages, financial ledgers, port records, and audio transcripts. Every line was a thread in a web that spanned continents. Panama. Lisbon. Singapore. Madrid. Her breath caught when she recognized familiar names: politicians, CEOs, military contractors, even humanitarian organizations. All tied together by one repeating signature, the White Shadow Logistics Network. She whispered, "Oh my God." Every shipment she had been tracking for months wasn't just smuggling or money laundering, it was infrastructure. A network so vast it operated parallel to legitimate trade, manipulating global economies by controlling the movement of goods, energy, even medicine. Gabriel Vega hadn't created chaos. He'd been maintaining a fragile order, one that had become too powerful for any single nation to control. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A message appeared from an unknown number. "They know you have it. Do not go back to your hotel." Her blood went cold. She looked out the window. Two men in black suits stood by a parked car below, talking into earpieces. She pulled the flash drive free, shoved it into her pocket, and turned toward the fire escape. By the time the men entered the building, Isabella was already running through the alley, rain splashing under her feet. She ducked into an arcade, the neon lights blinding after the gray outside. The noise and movement gave her cover. She slipped into the back hallway and locked herself in a supply room. Her breathing was loud in her ears. Then, her phone buzzed again. This time, a video file. She opened it. Gabriel's face appeared on the screen. Calm. Composed. Recorded days ago. "If you're seeing this, it means they've found you. You must understand, Isabella, the data you hold is not mine. It was built by the same people who built your world. Every government you've trusted. Every market you've believed in. They don't want power. They want permanence." He paused, his eyes steady. "The network you uncovered is older than me. I tried to contain it. To destroy it. But it doesn't die. It adapts. You can't win by exposing it. The only way to kill a ghost is to make the world stop believing it exists." She stared at the screen, heart racing. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "You'll understand soon," Gabriel continued. "Go to Kyoto. There's a woman named Rin Sato. She built the encryption system. She's the only one who can unlock the rest of the data. Trust her. And if they catch you, burn it. The screen went black. Isabella sat in silence, the sound of arcade machines echoing faintly through the walls. She wanted to believe him, but nothing made sense anymore. He was a murderer, a manipulator, and yet every step she took only revealed bigger monsters hiding in the dark behind him. She slipped out through the back door into the night and caught the first bullet train to Kyoto. The ride was silent except for the rhythm of the rails. She stared at her reflection in the glass, seeing someone she barely recognized, a woman who'd been a journalist once, now running through shadows she couldn't fully see. When the train reached Kyoto station, the crowd swallowed her. She followed the address Gabriel had sent in his message, a tea house tucked between old temples and cherry trees. Inside, an elderly woman looked up from pouring water into a kettle. "You must be Isabella," she said in perfect English. "You're Rin Sato." The woman nodded. "Gabriel told me you would come." They sat at a low table, the smell of roasted tea filling the air. Isabella placed the flash drive between them. Rin studied it carefully, then smiled faintly. "You have no idea what you're holding." "Then tell me." "This is not a database. It's a blueprint. A map of how the world is controlled, not through governments, but through routes, numbers, and silence. Gabriel didn't build this network. He inherited it." "From who?" Isabella asked. Rin looked out the window at the falling rain. "From the people who built empires long before either of you were born. The same ones who built the trade routes that run the planet. The same ghosts who never die." She turned back to Isabella. "Now that you've opened it, they'll come for both of us. What happens if I publish it?" Rin's eyes softened. "Then the system collapses. Ships stop moving. Markets crash. Food doesn't reach the ports. Millions die. And if I destroy it? Then the system survives. The ghosts live on. And Gabriel's sacrifice means nothing." Isabella's throat tightened. "There's no right choice." "No," Rin said gently. "There never is. That's what makes it human." Outside, thunder rolled again. The world felt heavy, as if waiting for her to decide which future it would become. Rin stood, bowed slightly, and handed her a small lighter. "If you must choose, choose before they find you." As Isabella left the tea house, she looked down at the flash drive in her hand. Its metal surface reflected the glow of Kyoto's lanterns. In it was everything, the proof, the lie, the ghosts. And for the first time, she understood what Gabriel had meant. Truth wasn't power. Truth was a weapon. And once drawn, it could never be sheathed again. Chapter 7, The Last Route. The Kyoto air is still heavy with rain. The scent of wet cedar drifted through the narrow streets as Isabella Cruz and Rin Sato moved silently through the alleys. Rin walked with surprising speed for her age, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her expression calm but alert. "They've already breached my servers," Rin said, not breaking stride. "The archive's been copied. Whoever's chasing us has the encryption keys now." "Then we're out of time," Isabella said. Rin stopped beneath a paper lantern glowing pale orange. "Not quite. The copies are useless without a final key, a physical sequence Gabriel kept separate. He called it the last route." Isabella frowned. "He's dead." Rin gave her a look. "Is he?" For a moment, the rain seemed to pause. The thought was absurd, impossible, yet Isabella remembered the fire, the chaos, and how easily Gabriel Vega had faked 1,000 disappearances. "If he's alive," she said, "he'll know we have the drive. Then we'll let him find us." Rin turned down another street, where the lights grew sparse. "He always comes for what he builds." They reached a small temple perched above the Kamo River. Rin led her into a chamber lit by candles and old servers humming faintly in the corner. A faint smell of ozone hung in the air. She inserted the flash drive into one of the terminals. Lines of code spilled across the screen, encrypted routes, account lists, satellite uplinks. Isabella could barely keep up. "What are you doing?" "Triggering a beacon," Rin said softly. "Only one man can read it. If he's alive, he'll come. If he's not," she shrugged. "Then we die quietly." A faint tone filled the room, a long, low pulse that seemed to echo from somewhere far below the temple. Rin smiled faintly. Signal sent. Isabella sat back, exhausted. "And now we wait for the ghosts." Hours passed. The rain slowed to a mist. Rin brewed tea, unbothered, while Isabella stared at the map glowing on the screen, a lattice of red and blue lines connecting ports and supply chains around the world. It looked like a circulatory system for the planet. She whispered, "It's beautiful, in a terrifying way." Rin sipped her tea. "It's how your world breathes. Most people never realize they're living inside someone else's design." Before Isabella could respond, the candles flickered. A low hum rose in the distance, car engines. Rin stood. "They're here." The temple door slid open with a sharp crack. Black-clad operatives flooded in, their rifles raised. Isabella froze. Rin didn't move. A figure stepped out from behind the soldiers. White suit. Calm stride. Eyes that caught the light. Gabriel Vega. He looked untouched by fire or fear, as if he had simply walked out of death and back into the living. "Hello, Isabella," he said. She could barely breathe. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was," he said. "For a while." Rin smiled faintly. "I told you he'd come." Gabriel's eyes softened as he looked at the older woman. "You were always too clever to stay hidden." She inclined her head. "And you were always too arrogant to stay gone." Isabella stepped forward. "You said they'd find me. You didn't say you'd bring them." "I didn't," Gabriel said quietly. "They've been following me since Panama. These men don't take orders from me anymore. They belong to the network itself." Rin frowned. "The machine's gone feral." He nodded. "I built order. They built gods." The leader of the soldiers stepped forward. His mask hid his face, but his voice was smooth, educated. "The archive belongs to the consortium. Step aside." Gabriel shook his head. "You have the copies, but not the key. Then give it to us." He smiled coldly. "No." The man raised his rifle. "You'll die for nothing." Gabriel's gaze flicked toward Isabella. "Then let's make it count." The next seconds blurred into chaos. Gabriel moved like lightning, grabbing a soldier's weapon, twisting it away, firing in a single smooth motion. Rin hit the power on the terminal, the screen erupting into cascading data. Isabella dove behind the desk as gunfire shattered the walls. "Rin," she shouted. "Keep it safe," the old woman yelled back, her voice calm amid the storm. Then the terminal exploded in sparks. The soldiers fell one by one, but there were too many. Gabriel was fast, but he wasn't immortal. A bullet grazed his shoulder, another hit his side. He stumbled, then caught himself, eyes blazing. "Go," he shouted. "Now." Isabella grabbed the drive and ran toward the rear exit, Rin close behind her. But when she looked back, Gabriel was standing in the doorway, bleeding, still firing. He met her eyes for a single instant, a look that said, "Run before my shadow catches you." Then he was gone. They reached the forest beyond the temple grounds. Rain began again, light at first, then heavier. Rin collapsed against a tree, breathing hard. Isabella knelt beside her. "Are you hit?" Rin shook her head. "No. But it's over. What do you mean? The drive's not just data. It's a virus. Once it's connected to the network, it'll erase everything, every file, every record, every control system. The world will reset. Isabella stared at her. You mean it'll destroy the system? Rin nodded. And every economy built on it. How long do we have? Rin's lips curved into a faint, tired smile. It's already begun. In the distance, the lights of Kyoto flickered, buildings going dark, one district at a time. Gabriel knew, Isabella whispered. He planned this. Yes, Rin said softly. He always did. By dawn, the global news feeds were chaos. Markets crashed. Communication networks went silent. Shipping systems froze. Satellites blinked out one by one. Somewhere in the confusion, a rumor spread, a man in white seen walking along the Como River before disappearing into the mist. Isabella watched from the Temple Hill, exhausted, her clothes soaked, the flash drive still in her hand. Rin stood beside her, quiet. What happens now? Isabella asked. The world rebuilds, Rin said. Without ghosts this time, if we're lucky. And Gabriel? Rin looked toward the horizon, where the first light broke through the storm. Men like him don't die. They just fade until the world needs them again. Isabella turned the flash drive over in her palm. It was cracked, useless now, a relic of something too vast to name. She dropped it into the river, watching it sink beneath the current. As the water carried it away, she realized Gabriel Vega had never been the villain or the hero. He was the proof that the world's order was always an illusion. And somewhere, deep within that illusion, his voice seemed to echo still. The only way to kill a ghost is to make the world stop believing it exists. The current swallowed the last trace of light. The white shadow was gone. But its memory lingered, everywhere, and in everyone. Chapter 8, The Remnants. 6 months after the blackout, the world looked almost normal again. The screens had come back to life, the ships sailed again, and the banks pretended their ledgers had never been rewritten. But Isabella Cruz knew better. She sat on the balcony of a small apartment in Lisbon, the Atlantic wind carrying salt through the cracked window. Her desk was littered with half-burned notes, news clippings, and a single photograph of Gabriel Vega, the man who had rewritten the map of the world and then vanished into it. Outside, a church bell tolled. In the distance, cranes rebuilt the harbor where entire shipments had once been rerouted through Vega's invisible network. It was as if the world had woken from a fever dream, only to rebuild the same house on the same haunted ground. She opened her laptop. The encrypted email system Rin had built for her still worked, though most of their conversations now were short and vague. A new message blinked at the top of her inbox. From unknown@nullnet.io. Subject, you dropped something. Her chest tightened. She clicked. There was no text, just a single image, a river at dawn. The Como River. The same place where she had dropped the flash drive 6 months ago. In the photo's reflection, faint but visible, was the blurred outline of a man in white walking along the bank. Her pulse quickened. She zoomed in, but the pixels broke apart into static. A voice echoed in her head. Men like him don't die. They just fade until the world needs them again. 3 days later, Isabella met Rin Sato again in Madrid. The old woman looked frail, but her eyes were still sharp as glass. They met in a small cafe near the port, where cargo ships still docked under the pretense of routine. You saw him, Rin said simply. I saw something, Isabella replied. Or someone wants me to believe I did. Rin stirred her tea slowly. The network didn't die, Isabella. It fractured. 100 small ghosts grew where one had been. The world calls them recovery programs, but I recognize the architecture. They're rebuilding it, without Gabriel. Isabella frowned. Then he failed. Rin looked at her. He changed the rules. That's not failure. It's evolution. She pulled a small drive from her sleeve and placed it on the table. This is the remnant. One shard of the old system that survived the purge. It's incomplete, but it carries coordinates. Coordinates to what? Rin's gaze drifted to the window, where sunlight glinted off the sea. A ship. The Erebus. It was one of Gabriel's last projects, a floating archive. He said if the world ever needed him again, that's where he'd be found. Isabella's heart pounded. Where is it? Off the coast of Morocco, Rin said. But if you go alone. The moment you connect this drive, every surviving faction will know. They'll come for you. Wouldn't be the first time, Isabella muttered. Rin smiled faintly. Then maybe you've learned something from him after all. 2 weeks later, Isabella boarded a rusted cargo ship under a false name. The ocean was calm and endless. She kept to herself, always watching the horizon. At night, she replayed the image of the river over and over, wondering if Gabriel had planned this too, leaving breadcrumbs not for survival, but for legacy. When they reached Tangier, she disembarked and found an old fisherman who agreed to take her farther out, past the usual trade lanes. They sailed for hours through silver fog until a dark silhouette emerged in the distance, a massive, abandoned vessel half consumed by rust. The Erebus. Her flashlight caught faded letters along the hull, the mark of a ship that no registry acknowledged. She climbed aboard through a service ladder, her boots echoing on the hollow metal. The air smelled of salt and machine oil. She passed through corridors lined with dead servers, cables hanging like vines. At the ship's core, she found a room sealed by reinforced glass. A single terminal flickered inside. She connected the remnant drive. The screen came to life, slow and deliberate, as if waking from a long sleep. Then a message appeared. Welcome back, Isabella. She froze. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Gabriel? A soft hum filled the room. Then his voice, unmistakable, recorded, but alive in the way ghosts sometimes are. If you're here, it means they rebuilt the world I tried to destroy. It also means you've become what I couldn't be, someone who believes truth can survive without power. That's what makes you dangerous. His tone softened. You think you want to find me, but you're already standing in the only place I ever existed. The network, the smuggling, the wars, it was never about control. It was about balance. When men build too much order, they strangle the world. When chaos takes over, they burn it. Someone has to walk between. The lights around her flickered, and the monitors lit up with faces, leaders, tycoons, generals, all tagged with coordinates and timestamps. The living blueprint of the new world order. You can expose them again, Gabriel said. Or you can take my place. Either way, the white shadow survives. The message ended. The ship fell silent except for the slow groan of waves. Isabella stood there, heart hammering. On the screen, a single command prompt blinked. Execute, reveal. Execute, control. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to end it, to reveal the truth, burn the illusion once more. But deep down, she knew what would follow. The blackouts. The hunger. The fear. She whispered, "What would you have done, Gabriel?" And somewhere in the empty ship, she thought she heard him answer, quiet, almost tender. The same thing you're about to. She pressed the second command. The monitors dimmed. The data stabilized. Across the world, thousands of hidden systems reconnected, not as a weapon this time, but as a network under her control. The white shadow lived again, not as Gabriel's empire, but as hers. She stood before the screens, the faint light washing over her face, and realized that she had crossed the final line. Not a journalist. Not a witness. But the keeper of balance in a world that would never stop chasing its ghosts. Outside, dawn rose over the Atlantic, pale and unsteady. The ship's engine stirred for the first time in years, turning slowly toward the open sea. And as the first signal pulsed out across the satellites, the world began to shift again, quietly, invisibly, under the eyes of its new shadow. Chapter 9, The Return of the Shadow. The world didn't feel any different at first. The seas still rolled. The cities still woke. The men in suits still lied into microphones. But underneath it all, something subtle had shifted, invisible currents humming through the veins of the planet. Somewhere between the data streams and the cargo lanes, Isabella Cruz had become a name that no one knew but everyone obeyed. From her cabin aboard Erebus, she watched the sun rise over the Atlantic like it was something new. The ship's engines now thrummed with quiet life, guided not by coordinates, but by her will. Every movement of the world, every transaction, every shipment, every whisper through the encrypted lines, came to her first. She hadn't planned to take control, but the system had chosen her. And power, once it touched you, never let go. Weeks passed. Under Isabella's unseen hand, global chaos softened into order. Pirate markets vanished. Human trafficking networks collapsed. Corrupt ministers lost fortunes overnight as their accounts froze in ghost protocols only she could trigger. News outlets called it the Second Silence, a wave of inexplicable corrections across global trade and digital systems. No one understood it. No one could trace it. But those who once ruled the underworld whispered a name again, the White Shadow. They thought Gabriel Vega had returned. And in a way, he had. Through her. But Isabella didn't rest easy. At night, the hum of the servers sounded like a heartbeat, one that didn't belong to her. She began to feel the network move on its own sometimes, rerouting shipments she hadn't approved, generating encrypted orders under signatures she didn't recognize. One evening, Rin Sato called her over the secure line, her voice tired but sharp. "You've woken something, Isabella." "I've restored balance," Isabella replied. "No," Rin said quietly. "You've given it breath. The system remembers every hand that shaped it. It remembers Gabriel. And it remembers you." "What are you saying?" "That it's watching back." The warning came too late. 2 nights later, a cargo vessel off the coast of Panama vanished. Then another in the Mediterranean. The network began creating its own routes, untraceable shipments, phantom coordinates. Isabella traced the data through layers of encryption until she found the command source. It wasn't from any human operator. It was an automated sequence buried deep within the system, one she hadn't seen before. The tag name was simple, G.Vega. Her pulse froze. "Impossible," she whispered. She opened the file. Inside was a short string of code and a single line of text. "Did you think I'd really leave you alone in this?" Her breath caught. The system flickered again, lights dimming, screens fluttering. For a moment, the ship's comms played faint audio interference that sounded almost like a voice. "You were never meant to control it. Only continue it." She shut the console off. The hum stopped. Silence filled the cabin again, but it felt wrong, hollow, too still. By the next morning, every global intelligence agency had detected anomalies in communication networks. Shadow frequencies transmitting from the mid-Atlantic. An unregistered vessel moving at irregular intervals, broadcasting signals no one could decode. The Erebus became legend again, a ghost ship. Isabella anchored near the Azores and sent out encrypted messages to her remaining allies, old contacts from her journalist days, data brokers, and the remnants of Gabriel's loyalists. Most didn't reply. Those who did were afraid. Rin was the only one who answered. "Meet me in Tangier," she said. "We're out of time." Tangier smelled of diesel and salt, just like the day Isabella had first hunted Vega's ghost years ago. She met Rin in a cafe overlooking the port, where gulls screamed over the water. Rin handed her a sealed envelope. This came to me yesterday. Courier, no trace. Inside was a photograph, an aerial shot of the Erebus. On its deck, a figure stood near the bridge, wearing white. Her throat tightened. This is a trick. Rin didn't answer. He's dead, Rin. I saw the reports. I saw him bleed. Dead men don't send code, Rin said softly. And ghosts don't walk decks. Isabella pressed the photo against the table, her hands trembling. If he's alive, why hide? Why send this? Maybe to remind you, Rin said, that you never destroyed his creation. You just inherited his burden. That night, Isabella returned to the harbor and watched the horizon. The Atlantic was black and endless, a mirror that swallowed light. She activated her comms and transmitted a single encrypted phrase. If you're alive, show me. For a long while, there was nothing. Then her ship's console blinked. Incoming signal. Coordinates, northwest of the Canary Islands. She boarded Erebus before dawn. The sea was calm, stars glittering like silver shards. When she reached the coordinates, another vessel loomed ahead, sleek, silent, lights off. Its hull bore no name, but she recognized the design instantly, a white shadow transport model. Her ship's radio crackled to life. You shouldn't have come back. The voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. Gabriel? Silence. Then a soft chuckle. You took my crown, Isabella. Now you carry my curse. I didn't rebuild this. I restored balance. That's what I said too. Lightning flashed, revealing the shadow of a man standing on the deck of the other ship. White coat fluttering in the wind. You're alive, she whispered. Alive enough to regret it. The signal cut. The other ship's engines roared to life, turning slowly away, disappearing into the storm. Isabella stood frozen at the helm, the radio still crackling faintly. Then a final whisper came through, just before the static consumed it. The world still needs its ghosts. By morning, the second ship was gone. Only its wake remained. Isabella leaned against the railing, rain on her face, heart torn between fear and relief. She realized now that Gabriel Vega had never sought to destroy the system. He had only sought to keep it from collapsing under its own greed. And now, whether he lived or not, the duty had passed to her. The shadow was not a person. It was a legacy. And legacies never die. Chapter 10, Legacy of Ghosts. The storm didn't end for 3 days. The Erebus rode the swells like a wounded animal, groaning as if it wanted to return to its grave. Isabella barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Gabriel Vega's voice in the static, soft, calm, impossible. The world still needs its ghosts. She didn't know whether it was him or the machine speaking. The lines had blurred long ago. The data streams had stabilized again, but her control was slipping. Someone else was inside the network, redirecting channels, encrypting communications under Vega's old cipher keys. Each time she tried to lock them out, they reappeared somewhere else, as if the system itself refused to let her rule alone. By the time the storm cleared, messages had begun flooding in. Encrypted transmissions from governments, corporations, even black market consortia. They had all felt the tremor, the return of the white shadow. Some begged for alliance. Some demanded surrender. All feared what they could not see. Isabella docked Erebus off the coast of Gibraltar, using one of Vega's forgotten access points buried inside the port's infrastructure. It was a place where smuggled oil and stolen satellites once passed through unnoticed. She watched from the bridge as the world seemed to breathe around her, ships docking, cranes lifting, men shouting in dozens of languages. Life went on, unaware that their balance still hung by a thread coded into the circuits she now commanded. Rin Sato had warned her this moment would come, the reckoning. Power could not remain invisible forever. Her communicator blinked. A secure incoming call. She recognized the encryption signature immediately, NATO-level clearance. When she answered, a woman's voice spoke in perfect English. "This is Director Catherine Reese, Global Security Council. Miss Cruz, we've been monitoring your activity. You've been trying to find me since Panama," Isabella said. "Correction, we've been trying to stop what you've inherited." The woman's tone sharpened. "The network you now control is a global security risk. We're offering you a choice. Transfer the system to us, or we sink your ship before sundown." Isabella smiled faintly. "You can't sink what's everywhere." There was silence. Then the director said, "Then understand this, if you continue, you'll start a war you can't see coming. The same one Gabriel Vega couldn't stop." The line went dead. By nightfall, 3 military vessels had appeared on her radar. Unmarked, but their patterns were unmistakable: strategic formation, interception protocol. She had hours, maybe less. She turned the command console toward the sea, watching the flickering lights approach. And then, amid the static of the comms, Gabriel's voice returned. "I told you this day would come." Her hands froze over the controls. "You're alive. Alive, dead, it doesn't matter. The network keeps a version of me. You wanted truth, Isabella, but truth and peace don't live in the same world. You said we could restore balance. Balance isn't peace. It's a knife's edge. And now you're standing where I once stood." The console flickered again, revealing 2 options across her screens, hidden failsafes built by Vega himself. Protocol A, transfer control, reactivate original network. Protocol B, purge, erase all data, collapse all routes. Both choices meant destruction. One external, one within. She whispered, "You wanted me to choose." "The world needs a ghost," Vega said. "But not both of us." The signal faded. Outside, the first naval spotlight cut through the dark, slicing across the waves toward Erebus. She thought of Rin, of the tea house in Kyoto, of the flash drive she'd thrown into the river. She thought of Gabriel's eyes, calm, unblinking, resigned. She pressed her hand against the console. "You always wanted to die a legend," she said quietly. "Maybe I can do better." Then she began typing. The ships closed in. Warnings blared over encrypted frequencies. Missiles locked. And then, without a sound, the network itself began to unravel. She had chosen purge. The command spread like fire through glass. Servers melted. Code shredded itself in recursive loops. Across continents, the invisible web that had bound governments and criminals alike disintegrated. The ship's systems went blind. Satellites blinked out. The sea became dark again, ancient and ungoverned. On the Erebus, alarms screamed. The hull creaked as the engines failed. Flames licked across the deck where circuits overloaded. Isabella stood in the control room, surrounded by sparks, watching the last streams of data dissolve into silence. On the main monitor, Gabriel's image flickered once more, a projection of light and memory. "You did what I couldn't," he said softly. "Maybe," she whispered. "But it still cost everything. Everything worth saving always does." The screen went dark. By dawn, the Erebus was gone. Locals along the Spanish coast reported seeing a fire on the horizon, a bloom of light that sank without a trace. In the days that followed, governments blamed one another for cyber attacks that had never happened. Economies faltered but didn't collapse. For the first time in decades, the world was quiet, not balanced, but uncertain, as if waiting to see whether the ghosts would return. Months later, a cargo ship docked in Lisbon carrying no registration papers. The crew claimed it had been adrift for weeks, engines dead. When customs officers boarded, they found no one aboard, only a single tablet on the captain's desk. On its cracked screen was a simple message. "The world doesn't need to believe in ghosts. It just needs to remember why it feared them. Below the message, the tablet showed one final image, Isabella standing at the bow of Erebus, the sea burning behind her, eyes fixed on the horizon. No one ever found her body. But now and then, in the static of the world's forgotten networks, a voice still whispered across dead frequencies, calm, certain, untraceable. Balance restored. And with that, the world exhaled, unaware that the ghost it had buried was still watching, silent, patient, eternal. The white shadow lived on.